Radio installations' functionality on ships have increasingly improved in recent years. At the same time, as more ships enter into service, the number of incident reports citing false distress alerts have also increased. This indicates a gap between the crew's knowledge of operating the equipment and the advanced technologies that are supposed to make the equipment easier to use. Another reason is that the crew are simply given a manual to learn to use the equipment, which can be a daunting task. As false distress alerts are troublesome to rescue organizations and nearby ships, the importance of appropriate alerting cannot be stressed enough. Additionally, stricter inspections of radio installations by PSC inspectors in recent years further highlight the need to improve radio installations' handling skills and familiarize duties concerned. This DVD will cover all practical communication duties, from operating the equipment to managing the required documents, so that captains and navigation officers can use them accurately and reliably. Every year, many ships receive negative reports upon PSC inspections. The reports cite the inability of radio officers to correctly operate radio installations and to the malfunctioning of poorly maintained hardware, including MFHF radio installation and the Inmarsat ship Earth station. The comments point to the crew's failure to routinely check their ship's radio installations. Meanwhile, captains and navigation officers responsible for radio communication were unable to properly operate their equipment as requested by the PSC inspector. Improper use of radio installations could gravely affect the safe operation of the ship. Moreover, if the PSC inspection finds something wrong, the inspector can detain the ship at the port. So it is important to handle and treat the radio installations according to instructions and regulations. PSC inspections will point out if radio installations are malfunctioning or improperly maintained. They may also check any related manuals and documents on hand as well as the auxiliary power source, so attention should also be paid to these items. However, these problems can be avoided by properly checking, managing and operating your equipment. Regular education and training will provide the necessary knowledge. Captains and navigation officers responsible for radio communication should not only be familiar with the communication regularly used in their work, but also, importantly, with distress alerts. They should keep on board the required certificates and logs, including a radio station license and a radio logbook. This DVD will explain these important matters. Some accidents are caused by nature, such as lightning, while others are invited by run-down equipment. Signs of equipment failure can be identified by regular inspections, but natural disasters are difficult to avoid. If any equipment runs into trouble, you have to know in advance what remedy the situation calls for. For trouble with radio installations, for instance, the policy adopted for most ships is to get it repaired on shore and that nothing can be done on board. You have to ask the manufacturer to repair the equipment. Since most manufacturers have a worldwide network of agents, they can respond quickly. The decision to contact the manufacturer directly when a problem arises differs from one ship management company to another, but the usual practice is to make contact through your company. In order to make contact, however, you have to have functioning radio installations. Since it is rare for all the radio installations to fail at the same time, you should be able to find one to do so. For instance, if your Inmarsat C ship Earth station is broken, you can use another Inmarsat ship Earth station for voice or email messaging. If not, you can try, for example, sending a telex message by MFHF NBDP unit. So it is important that radio captains and navigation officers responsible for radio communication know which options are available for the situation. GMDSS is a global maritime distress and safety system used since February 1992 under relevant international rules. It enables ships to send distress alerts rapidly and securely, irrespective of their location. For operation of the GMDSS system, there are 4 classifications of sea areas around the world according to the reach of a radio wave. Most ocean-going ships navigate in Sea Area A3 and are required to have VHF radio installation, MF radio installation, HF radio installation or Inmarsat-C ship earth station, Navtex receivers, EPARB, SART and 2-way VHF radio telephone apparatus. GMDSS permits operation by a small staff, whether by at-sea electronic maintenance or shore-based maintenance and duplication of equipment. However, since at-sea electronic maintenance requires highly sophisticated expertise, it is done usually by onshore staff and duplication of equipment. Duplication of equipment requires 2 VHF radio installations with DSC and a combination of 2 Inmarsat-C ship earth stations and 1 MF radio installation, or of 1 Inmarsat-C ship earth station and 1 MF-HF radio installation with DSC and NBDP. Under the radio regulations, radio waves are classified by the frequency band of 3 Hz and consecutive 10 folds of 3 Hz. For communication to and from ships, MF to UHF frequency bands are used. Radio waves of the MF band are available for communication night and day. At night, the ionosphere reflects the signals allowing communication at farther distances than in the daytime. Waves in the HF band permit communication over a long distance by utilizing ionospheric reflections, but the disadvantage is that they are subject to seasons or the using a NBDP unit. Transmission of a distress alert using an Inmarsat-C ship earth station can also be done in one of 2 ways, pressing a one-touch button or by manual setting. To make a one-touch distress alert, press the distress button on the ship earth station or the remote button on the bridge for 4 or more seconds. If you use a one-touch button to send a distress alert, the nature of the distress will be undesignated when also using the Inmarsat-C ship earth station. While holding down the button, an alarm will beep. Once this changes to a continuous alarm, the ship's position and the time will be automatically transmitted. If you release the button during the beeps, no distress alert will be sent. Be careful not to let go until after the beeps change to a continuous alarm. If you are not receiving a normal signal from GPS, you will have to manually set your ship's position. The distress alert will be repeated until receiving a response or cancelled by holding down the control and hitting the X key at the same time. On the other hand, if you use the manual setting, you will have to set the required transmission settings one by one from the initial values accordingly. If you have sufficient time to identify the nature of the distress along with the other required information and transmit them, you can provide more detailed information. First, set the cursor to distress and press enter. Then, shift the cursor to nature and press enter. Next, select the distress situation such as fire, explosion. Similarly, set the data source, the ship's position, course and speed, and the coast earth station. Finally, hold down the distress button for 4 or more seconds to send a distress alert. The distress call will be repeated until receiving a response or cancelled by holding down the Control and hitting the X key at the same time. If you are using a two-way VHF radio telephone apparatus, select the channel, turn the squelch counterclockwise all the way, and turn on the power supply. Hold down the Press to Talk button and transmit. The power switch is combined with the volume control. To turn on, turn it clockwise. When the power is turned on, set the squelch to the proper level. The communication channels available for use by Japanese flagships are VHF channels 15, 16 and 17. IPARB can automatically get out of its holder when it sinks to about 4 meters below the sea surface when the hull sinks, or for any other reason. Its distress alerts are transmitted after rising to the sea's surface. It can continue to send alerts for at least 48 hours. You can also manually transmit distress alerts by IPARB. For manual transmission of alerts, turn the selector switch to the on position. SART is placed in a state of standby for reception when you turn on the transmit switch. When it receives radar interrogation from rescue ships or aircraft nearby, SART automatically sends a response signal. Even after standing by for 96 hours awaiting reception, it can transmit distress signals for at least 8 hours. If you notice that a false distress alert is being sent by the VHF radio installation or the MFHF radio installation, press the cancel or stop button to cut transmission. If you issued a false transmission, promptly notify the Rescue Coordination Center. This notification should contain the name, type of the ship, flag, call sign, MMSI and position of the ship, the time and the reason for the false transmission. Also notify radio stations in the area, giving the ship's name, call sign, MMSI and position and the time. If you receive any response by radio installation to the false distress alert, tell the respondent in an appropriate way that the transmission was mistaken. If you used the Inmarsat-C Ship Earth Station and IPARB, transmit distress priority message to the Rescue Coordination Center through the satellites and Coast Earth stations, which the false distress alert was sent. If you receive a direct or relayed distress alert on your VHF radio installation or MF radio installation, promptly notify your captain. If you receive an alert on a frequency band other than shortwave from a ship evidently in distress nearby and are unable to contact any coast station, act without delay and continue to try notifying a coast station of the fact. In other situations, keep watch. If you receive a distress alert on the HF band, keep watch but do not respond. If you receive a relayed distress alert by DSC, keep watch. If you receive a relayed distress alert by the Ship Earth Station, promptly notify your captain. Whatever distress alerting you receive should be entered into the logbook. If your ship does not attempt a rescue after receiving a distress alert, you should state the reason for not doing so. Each item of radio installations has its own prescribed functionality testing. The crew should conduct such tests as required. It is mandatory to describe the functionality tests that have been conducted in the radio logbook. Many daily logs have space for this purpose, so be sure to use them. It is not necessary to keep printouts of the test results. However, as PSC inspectors do sometimes ask to see them, it is a good idea to have them. It is required that each item of communication equipment be regularly tested according to its type and function to ensure its normal operation. Here, the aspects of each item to be checked are shown according to the frequency of testing. Daily testing and maintenance are required for VHF radio installation, MFHF radio installation, and clock accuracy. VHF radio installations are checked using the daily test function. For testing, press 3. The alarm lamp will come on, an alarm will sound, and the test result will be shown on the display unit. To end the test, press Cancel. MFHF radio installations are checked through their 3 self-diagnostic functions. The first is self-diagnostic test of MFHF radio installation. The second, self-diagnostic test of DSC NBDP modem. And the third, printer test. For a self-diagnostic test of the MFHF radio installation, press Tell and select Function. Then select the test and press Enter. The result will be shown on the display unit. Press Clear to end the test. For a self-diagnostic test of the DSC NBDP modem, have test messages transmitted and received within the modem to check that it is functioning. Choose the modem loop test from the earlier test screen by scrolling with the up or down button and press Enter to start the test. When the test is over, the result will be printed by the printer. After the printer has printed the message, the other's lamp will be lit and a buzzer will sound. Stop the sound by pressing the Stop button. Similarly, for the printer test, scroll up or down and select the printer from the earlier test screen and proceed. Check the radio room clock for accuracy every day. The frequencies of the time signal are 5 MHz, 10 MHz and 15 MHz. There are 2 weekly functionality tests required, one for MFHF radio installations and the other for Navtex receivers. MFHF radio installations are tested with actual communication using a DSC NBDP unit. When a nearby ship station's MMSI is known by AIS or otherwise, or when the MMSI of another ship can be heard on the VHF radio installations in advance, the test is conducted between the ship stations. If this is difficult, call a coast station to test your equipment. Usually, if you send a test message, you will get an automatic response. To transmit a test message, first write a test message and save it. Then open the Edit and Send for File screen and set the format to Individual, the category to Safety, and the telecommand to Test. Finally, designate the frequency for the situation at the time and transmit the message. For the ID and frequency of the coast station, refer to List of Coast Stations issued by ITU or Maritime Radio Stations issued by BA. For testing of the Navtex receiver, use its self-diagnostic function. The self-diagnostic test is conducted in the sequence of memory, keys, LCD and receiver unit. When you press Menu Escape, the main menu will appear. select Service and Test. If the result is OK, the apparatus is satisfactory. When Continue is displayed, press Enter to continue to test the keys. Press every key. Next, the LCD test begins. When Hit Any Key appears, pressing any key will start the receiver unit test. When a Finish message is displayed, press Enter to end the test. Press Print and the test results will be printed. Press Menu Escape to close the menu screen. There are 5 items for monthly testing and maintenance: the standby VHF radio installation, the Inmarsat C ship Earth station, the two-way VHF radio telephone apparatus, EPARB and SART. The standby VHF radio installation is tested by calling another ship. This test is done with the apparatus that is normally used and the standby unit, to which a radio wave will be transmitted. First press Call. When call type is displayed, press Enter. Turn the channel knob, select Test and press Enter. Press Enter for the ID selection. Input the ID of the other party station or of the main VHF radio installation and press Enter. Hold down the call button for 4 or more seconds to send a test message. When acknowledgement of transmission is received, an alarm will sound. Press Cancel to stop the alarm. For manual acknowledgement of receipt of a test message, first press Cancel to stop the alarm. After pressing Enter, keep the call button pressed for 4 or more seconds. Acknowledgement of reception will be transmitted. The Inmarsat C ship Earth station is checked with the PV test. For this test, press Alt and hit U at the same time. When the test menu appears, select Initiate PV Test. Keep in mind that because there is actual communication with a satellite during this test, no other operation can be taking place. The two-way VHF radio telephone apparatus is put to 2 tests: appearance and dialogue. Check the expiration date on the reverse battery and the presence of its unused seal. EPARB is put through its test function. Also examine how it looks and check its battery and hydrostatic release unit expiration dates. SART is inspected visually and its battery is checked for its expiration. SART may require a short emission test during a PSC inspection, so be sure to know how to perform the test. There are also annual checks and maintenance requirements for two-way VHF radio telephone apparatus, EPARB and SART. An EPARB check is outsourced to a specialized service company, which will provide a certificate upon completion. A SART check is also outsourced to a specialized company, which too will provide a certificate. The same applies when checking two-way VHF radio telephone apparatus. Again, the service company should provide you with a certificate verifying that the checkup had been performed. The SOLAS Convention requires that the auxiliary power source should, among others, accept an automatic switchover during main power source failure, supply power to the machines in use and the standby units once it switches over, and be able to supply power for at least 1 hour when power is also supplied from an emergency source, or at least 6 hours when an emergency power source is not available. Batteries are usually made to be maintenance-free, but they do need to be checked. Since the auxiliary power source is sometimes scrutinized by PSC inspectors, its maintenance requirements will be described next, classified by the type and testing frequency. The voltage of the auxiliary power source should be checked every day. Usually, a voltmeter on the centralized radio panel is available for this purpose. The voltage may vary from ship to ship, but it should match specifications. Also, the auxiliary power source should be put to a load test every month. The purpose of this is to make sure that the radio installations can be operated using only the auxiliary power source in an emergency. Use the self-diagnostic function of each equipment item or check if they operate after turning off the AC circuit breaker of the radio console, leaving the battery as the only available power source. Further, the auxiliary power source should be checked annually for its discharge. After turning off the AC circuit breaker for radio installations, operate the equipment to confirm the voltage drop. Then connect the AC circuit breaker and charge the battery to its full capacity. The SOLAS Convention requires every ship at sea to receive navigation and weather alerts. GMDSS broadcasts maritime safety information to each specific sea area, known as NAVARIA, by using Navtex receivers, NBDP of the HF band and EGC of Inmarsat-C Ship Earth Station. The following will describe Navtex, which is most frequently used, and SafetyNet, which is offered free of charge by EGC of the Inmarsat-C Ship Earth Station. Navtex information consists of abbreviations and signs. It begins with ZCZC, followed by the ID code of the transmitting source. The time of transmission is then stated. After that, the text is stated and NNNN closes the transmission. Navtex broadcasts use 490 kHz and 518 kHz of the MF band. It broadcasts in local languages at 490 kHz and in English at 518 kHz. Local language broadcasts are also offered at 4,209.5 kHz of the HF band. For reception, designate for each Navtex area a coast station identified by its ID number. The coast station is based on the position of your ship. Look for the appropriate station in the list of coast stations issued by ITU or Radio